Good morning, you guys. I'm really happy that John and Otto has decided to help us and to give us a little bit of their information, because I've got a wealth of experience on recruitment and recruitment tools. So, and in this really, really uncertain times, I think it's important that we rely on the best tools available to help us to make decisions. So I'm going to start off by asking Otto to give us a little bit of background on him.
Hi, good morning, everybody. I'm happy to be here as well. You will hear from John that he's the true professional recruiter, where I am a little bit more of a technologist. My background is in human psychology, assessments, technology, and I have been working in the field of HR for roughly 30 years. I've got clients globally, and we help them to digitize and automate and find the best tools for them, either for recruitment or any other services they have. Recruitment is of special interest at this point, of course, looking at the different skills that our clients need. And when you hear me speak, I will definitely come from that perspective.
Wonderful.
John?
Thanks, Otto. John, a little bit more about yourself, please.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Thank you for inviting us here today. So my background is pure recruitment. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, depending who you are. But I've got 15 years experience in the industry. I've worked for some of the kind of big multinational recruitment firms straight out of uni. That's all I've done. Interestingly, I actually also worked for LinkedIn, selling the talent solutions to HR professionals across the Middle East and helping them adopt different technologies, different tools that LinkedIn have in their suite, and then working with them to essentially build an employee and talent brand. I loved working for that company. I loved working in recruitment, but I always wanted to run my own business from a relatively young age. So 3 years ago now, I started Hoyamal Recruitment, and now we're at 10 people, just based in Dubai, but just about to open up London. And yeah, we specialize in corporate recruitment, so finance, IT, HR, legal, these kind of core functions. And we work with multinational, semi-government, government across the GCC, and we're because of our client base has expanded. That's why we're opening up new offices. So it's quite exciting. So hopefully I'll be able to share you some kind of tips and tricks, how we do it in the agency side, and how you can actually embed some of these things into your, whether you're a talent leader, talent acquisition leader, whether you're an HR director or an HR generalist, doesn't matter if you're a big or small company. As recruiters, we sometimes forget these basic things, and I don't want, when I speak today, I don't want to tell people how to suck eggs. I'm not trying to patronize, but some of these key things, even my guys still forget. So a few these things might help people, particularly in this competitive market.
Thank you very much, John. Sophie, over to you for a little bit of housekeeping rules.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, John, and thank you, Otto, for agreeing to be part of this event. And Frieda, as always, thank you for hosting. So a couple of housekeeping rules. I have all of the participants muted, but if you would like to ask a question at any time, please just bob it into the chat, and I'll pose the question to whichever of the speakers that you would like to ask the question to. We'll also have a Q&A session right at the end of the event, so a bit closer towards 10 o'clock. I hope you've got your coffee with you and your thinking heads and your recruitment minds on, because we're going to be doing quite a deep dive on some of the big topics that we get asked around recruitment at gulfHR, and hopefully give you some really good insights. The session will be recorded as well, just for your information, but we keep it all anonymous. Everyone's names get blanked out from the attendees, and we will also be creating a little toolkit and guide from the event afterwards of everything that's discussed, so that you can get access to everything afterwards. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy.
Thanks, Sophie. John, what would you say are the critical elements of effective recruitment?
Okay, so again, I don't want to tell people how to suck eggs, but what I've kind of thought about after you sent the questions through was some of the key things that go wrong in the recruitment process, and I see recruiters both from agency side and in-house get wrong. Now, obviously, the in-house recruiters are our clients, so we can't call them up and say this is what you're doing wrong, but maybe this gives everyone an opportunity to put everything on the table and perhaps debate what the wrong and right answer is. But because all we do is recruit every day, I thought I'd go through a few points that are interesting. So obviously there's a big difference between agency and in-house. I'd say the fundamentals of recruitment should be always the same. And often a recruitment or someone in HR has actually come from an agency side. The only difference I see is the buy-in from your, for us it's the client, and for you it'd be your internal line manager or hiring manager. So a big piece that I'll talk about today is essentially the control of the clients and of those line managers, and extracting all the information you need to do your job correctly. We'll go through it. Another thing is, and I think people are scared of this, not necessarily from the agency side, but for in-house, is realizing that you guys are salespeople, or your recruitment team are salespeople. And this doesn't necessarily mean they have to be really charismatic and, you know, chasing numbers. The best salespeople I've worked with and recruitment people that I've worked with have actually been a little bit more, or they've definitely been 100% organized, very professional, great communicators, and are not scared to ask questions. And this is what I would challenge people to speak about when dealing with line managers, like we do with clients. There's no good you just taking a job description that they give you and say, right, we need 3 people in this team, and then you going off. You need to spend time with that line manager, that hiring manager, and go through at length different questions. And what I'm going to do is just go through a few things that we do as quickly as I can, not to bore anyone, which I think are really important. Another thing that I'll touch and talk a lot about today is being the chief and brand ambassador for your business. So you're the first point of contact. You're the first person to ever speak to a business. They might not know about your business. You might be an SME. You might be a startup. They might not know anything about you. Often when we recruit for businesses and they want people internationally sat, they don't know who, you know, I remember I did so much work with Etihad at one point and helped them grow their business. People didn't know where Abu Dhabi was. People certainly didn't know what Etihad Airways was when it first grew. So you have to sell the region and sell the business. So I think people get a bit scared of the word sales, but that's a really important piece that I think people miss in-house and in agencies. I touched on managing the expectations of your clients or your hiring managers, and this all comes down to communication and building that relationship. As an aside, my wife's in HR, and she always says it's apparent who are the good internal recruiters and who are not, and that's because the good ones will take time to go and meet and sit with the line managers and go and build a really good relationship with them. I think especially if they're very senior or at C-suite, there might be a little bit of conflict, or the guys are a bit scared to go and approach them and push back. Whereas we challenge our guys to push back on clients and ask those questions. So yeah, I was going to ask if there was more people what everyone finds as their biggest challenges at the moment, but I don't think it's that kind of forum today, so I'll fly straight into it. So from my experience in general, I think the biggest challenges we find is being able to find the relevant talent, and talent not accepting the role further along the process. So we do all this work. We extend our network, we find the right person, and maybe we put 1 or 2 people for this great role. Then what I think a bad recruitment process is that you sit back and you think, oh, this is going to be fine. And then lo and behold, a month down the line, no one's taken the job and your backup candidate has taken another job. So what we do is we only worry about what we can control. So this goes down to, and again, if I'm going on too much about it, I just please interject. But what I find really important to do from day one is understanding the role and managing the client as best you can. So a few things I've noted down here. So establishing a deep understanding of the role. Take time to ask questions. Why? So why has this role become available? Take a detailed job description. What sometimes we do is we identify the best candidate in the market that the hiring manager wants. If we can't get that person, then we use that as a benchmark, and that really helps people. Also, what you need to do is push back if the expectations are unrealistic. So many times my clients say, I want the best candidate in the market and I want to pay them peanuts. Happens, and everyone has a budget. Internal recruitment teams and HR managers have a budget, and I understand that. But what I get my team to do is consult the hiring managers and say, look, this is unrealistic. So, and then we try and flex the job description or the budget from there. And I think that's something that perhaps in-house recruiters or even HR, senior HR people are sometimes scared to do with if it's C-suite, for instance, or if there's a big project saying, look, we're going to need to spend X, otherwise it's not going to happen. I think that's really important. A big rock, I'd say, in terms of when I'm taking a job description with anyone, is make sure I get the top 3 most important things. So that might be a certain qualification, that might be a certain industry skill set, it might be they have to have some kind of experience in leading or what have you. But those 3 rocks we always go back to. A big question we use as well, and I think a lot of people don't do this, is ask, what don't you want? That usually opens up a can of worms from an agency side, because you haven't got that access like most of you would have internally. Knowing what you don't want will save, what your client doesn't want will save you a lot of time. And again, it opens up different questions. Another thing that I would always follow that up with is assessing the urgency of the role. So a lot of time, and I guess this will happen with you guys internally as well, is a client will say, we need this person now. I'll go, okay. But then I'll ask something like, what's the impact of your business if this person isn't in the role? And if it transpires that actually they can go through the next quarter or next 2 quarters without that person on board, then it's not really urgent. And then you can ask questions around that. Also, have you got the budget signed off for this role? Many times I've been told by in-house recruiters or HR directors even, this is great, this is going through, we get the offer, we're expecting the offer, and then a week later we still haven't got the offer through because the budget hasn't been signed off with the CFO. All these kinds of questions, I think you can still ask internally if you don't have access to that on the system or that relationship. And I know it will depend, this is depending, everything I'm talking about is depending on the size of the business and what the relationship's like internally. But these are kind of things that you can kind of think about to kind of know where you stand with that role. So going back to managing your client or managing your hiring manager, we create deadlines with our clients in the right way. I mean, we're working with them; they're not working for us. But holding them to short time frames is a massive thing to keep the process going. And again, we want to keep this process as short and sharp as possible and efficient as possible. So just off the top of my head, I'd say shortlist feedback. As soon as you manage a time that you'll get that back. Interview times, create slots, and make it easy for your hiring manager to maybe go back to back. That's a big thing that people say, I don't have enough time to interview. So go, right, how about Tuesday morning? We're gonna do back to back time slots, and then they can block their time out of their diary, and it's done. Again, I know this is about building that relationship. And having to be confident enough to do that, but it does work. And the same goes all the way through the process to decision. I'm okay for time here?
You're good for time. John, so you've now done all of this. You've taken the perfect job spec. You've asked why what they don't want. You've recruited the right people, you've put it in front of them, they've looked at them. Actually, now we want it in blue or pink or purple. They just add criteria to the role now. And you say, tell me exactly what you didn't like about this person or that person. No, it's not that I didn't like them. I will know it when I see it.
Well, this is again where you need to take control of the situation. And I don't mean that in an aggressive way, but you're a consultant and you're an internal consultant for your business. So you need to be able to push back and say, that isn't going to be realistic. We're not going to find that person. And you need to make sure that you are seen as an expert in your field, which you are, within your business. Like you guys would reach out to me as an expert in my field to recruit within finance, for instance. So that's really important. I'd say is pushing back. I was going to speak next about how to create a network, and I can fly through this, and then I'm going to talk briefly about candidate management as well. So we talked about the client management, but I wanted to talk a little bit about how we go about creating a network and leveraging that. And then the last bit of the process, which always goes wrong, is the candidate. So I'll do my best to fly through that, if that's okay.
Good.
So we talked about obviously understanding the role and what your hiring manager wants. So now we're going to talk about being a networker. So obviously everyone knows as an agency, your network is your living. It's the same for internal recruiters. Network. So and I appreciate this is difficult because you might have a role in IT, in finance, supply chain, then you have to go off and do a project in the Philippines or KSA. So this is probably where it's very difficult, because you have to wear so many hats and be a consultant in so many expert in so many areas, especially if you're a generalist or you're a small team. I appreciate that, but again, a few more things that we do that might help. So interestingly, 90% of our placements come through leveraging referrals, not through job boards, putting things up on LinkedIn. It doesn't happen. So that tells a story, and we'll go through that. It's important to consistently grow and nurture this network. So we create a network through your partners, through LinkedIn, speaking to the market, understanding who the best people are. But then you've got to nurture that network. So it's sharing industry insights. It's talking about business achievements. It's large scale projects, exciting projects that you've won. It's the talent branding piece, which we'll speak about to you later. This is like a massive part of what you need to be doing as in-house recruiters or talent, or even HR. It's using your employees to sell the business to the rest of the market. So they do all the heavy lifting for you. And we can talk a little bit about that later. So exactly that. LinkedIn, people always talk to me and say, oh, don't you just sit on LinkedIn all day and you just put jobs up and then you wait for the CVs to come through? Well, number one, no, we don't. And again, I think maybe we've placed one person in the last 3 years through that. I know that, again, I used to work there, so I know how the back end works. I know how they sell it. But essentially, what you should be using these job boards for is brand. You'll find it very, very difficult to find a specific candidate who's just going to think, oh, I'm just going to apply for this. Because what you're doing by relying on job boards, and I'm not trying to sell recruitment agencies here, I'm just saying you can do this internally, is that you're assuming that all the talent in the world is sat looking for a job at that time. You're only looking at these active candidates rather than the more valuable candidates in the market that are passive. People know this, but sometimes they get lazy and they think, I'll put a job up and we'll get on with it. Sometimes my guys do that and I tell them not to. But we can go further through that anyway. And understanding how to communicate with those passive and active candidates is really important, because how you speak to them is completely different. How you sell to them is completely different. And again, if you want to cover that off, we can later talk about it. Otto will probably talk a little bit later about leveraging technology, ATS systems, how to code up keywords, and using the technology in the back end to do all the heavy lifting for you, so you can just concentrate on being a talent manager, a talent brand manager for your business. I'll quickly run through, because I know I'm rambling, to the candidate management piece. So the candidate management piece is as important as anything, because again, the most frustrating thing in my job is going through the process, finding an amazing candidate, then thinking, oh, I don't really need to find that many backups. And then I get to final interview and the candidate goes, no, I don't want to take it for XYZ reason. So those XYZ reasons are usually down to financials. And we can talk about what we do and how we train our guys to make sure that this doesn't happen. But I'll come to that in a second. But the first part is what we touched on earlier, which is first impressions. So if you're approaching a candidate, whether it's locally or internationally, you've got to think that you are the number one, you're the first person that speaks to him. So how you communicate with them on the phone or on the video conference, even in your emails, it's really important, and it sets the tone for the business. A big thing that we do now is, what I work with clients to do is share easy digestible information on the business, rather than saying, oh, check out the website. Or if the website is not very good, which happens to a lot of people, then we'll create a PDF or a deck that we can send on. And that is something that people should really think about, particularly if you're recruiting at scale. Always be closing. So that's like ABC. So we always talk about always be closing in recruitment, which is kind of a sales term. But the control of the candidate starts here, and particularly when we talk about package. If you don't know what a candidate is earning from the outset, you've got no control in the situation, and 9 times out of 10 you'll have issues closing the candidate for them to accept later on. And this is something, even I see recruitment consultants, and we hire a lot at the moment, and when people come in and do a presentation, this is something that they always miss. And our best consultants always, from the outset, will push, what are you currently earning? Tell me all your packages. Now, what are you going to be looking for a move? If you get the role and we offer you X, 100% will you take the role? Yes. And it's being direct in the right way, and managing that will convert many more hires than you know, because you don't want to just leave it. But people do that because it's a difficult conversation. And it's just incredibly frustrating. You do all this work for a month, 6 weeks, to the final stage, to the offer stage, and they turn around and you don't. You've wasted all that time. And I'm sure there'll be stories later where this happens all the time. Also, knowing if are they interviewing in other companies as well. Ask the question, because that will pop up. Oh, I'm going to take another role, and they'll start playing you off against each other. We've all been in businesses where someone does that. So I think that's really important to try and quash that early. I've gone through that. So, knowing your competitors as well. So within our markets, we'll know the pros and cons of each business. If you want to get it over the line, you've got to make sure that they're fully informed. And you, as an expert in your market, you should know what the pros and cons of your competitors, and that will help. That can help sell it, essentially. Constant communication without closing the candidate, we've spoken about. And a big piece that I think people in this region miss, which I've seen some really big success stories with who have done it well, is the onboarding part. So I'm sure we've got some HR professionals on the line. That is a massive part that your talent team should be looking at, is creating a fantastic onboarding experience. Again, we can follow that, but I've been speaking for ages, so I'll probably let someone else go.
Thank you very much, John. That was really insightful. Otto, how would you say technology is going to affect the way we recruit in 2021?
Well, What is for sure is that technology can't replace the feeling of an employer brand and the whole experience, especially if you are recruiting top talent. So it also depends on which tier of recruitment you are busy with. So if you're recruiting towards the top end of your organization, so mainly executives, the personal hand of the recruiter and whoever agency you're dealing with is particularly important. But when you start looking at the lower tiers in the organization, the process obviously changes, and you often deal with a process where you've got many more candidates, as well as potentially numbers that is quite hard to deal with. So at a technology level, the first thing I always refer to is data. So the quality of the information you give is directly related to the quality of CVs you will receive. So John referred to it very briefly, that the recruiter must ask questions to clarify what is needed. But the quality of data that we generally find that clients have available is not up to standard. So there's a key focus on sorting out the information beforehand, before you start the recruitment process, be that the budgets and so forth, but more specifically, what is it that I'm actually looking for? So how clear can I be on the top requirements for the candidate, be those competencies or skills, and more importantly, how clear can I be in using the relevant job title for this role? The clearer I am, the better I can be at sourcing through technology. Now, when we talk about technology, of course, we can talk about technology applications that helps you look for candidates, but we also have to look at the internet and the availability of data in the internet. So more and more push technology becomes available. So with push technology, I mean you as the employer are very clear on what you need. You minimize the level of content you push in, but the content you push in is of exceptional quality. So as you push this content into your internet space, be that through LinkedIn, job boards, whatever the case might be, and there's processes that goes with that, i.e. your employer brand and so forth. But as CV starts to come in, the quality of that CV will immediately tell you whether the data you pushed into the environment is actually giving you the candidates you're looking for. Important as well today is there's a massive movement in terms of automated shortlisting and things like self-assessment processes where you actually force candidates to shortlist. Now, there's some of the big employers out there that can recruit for something like 25,000 candidates a month. So in those cases, we are dealing with a very different scenario. We are dealing with automated environments that has to shortlist for you, that has to root out some candidates that are not viable, and of course responding to those candidates in a suitable manner, making sure that they don't have a negative experience, be it that they might have been inappropriate candidates anyway. That doesn't matter. The fact that even those technologies has to service you from an employer brand. More recently actually means the last 4 years already, we've started to get bots in interview processes. Again, I will certainly not suggest bots for any high-end recruitment. Definitely not for top talent. That's the fastest way you will lose top talent if you allow bots to drive that for you. But when you deal with mass recruitments, having a bot do an interview is potentially not frowned upon. Certainly candidates that are much younger, if you're recruiting in the student corps, they will actually find that very interesting, being interviewed by a bot. And you obviously also set a certain employment brand for yourself, being that advanced in utilizing some of these technologies. Of course, depending on what you're recruiting for. If you're recruiting for a salesperson, they might have a certain response to that type of technology. If you're recruiting for a technologist, you will have a very different response to that technology. So as you start using some of these, again, push technologies that then, given the data that you've pushed in, push candidates to you, have some other shortlisting process that is all automated based on the quality of data that you submitted. so have certain self-assessment solutions that runs that can pre-select your top candidate, or your, let's say, the top 20% of your number of candidates that applied for the position. The doing of online interviews, of course, is a reality today, especially given COVID at the moment. But ultimately, I always like to get the feeling in the room when you recruit somebody. But more and more, you also get technology that does face recognition, that starts to recognize emotion, starts to recognize a certain way people speak, and start to define certain patterns in those. So one must not underestimate where artificial intelligence is going, and the fact that a machine starts learning the more it actually recruits for you. So when you start getting dedicated recruitment bots, and those dedicated recruitment bots learns what are the types of candidates that you want to employ, and that actually goes through the process for you, the better they will become. So it's our choice as employers whether we actually dip our feet, or toes rather, into this recruitment and automated recruitment world or not. But at some point, especially if you're into mass recruitment, this will become a reality, and you will have to deal with them. There are several factors here that we also have to keep in mind. Of course, this is very different in different parts of the world, but recruiting for full-time candidates versus part-time candidates makes a massive difference. There is a massive move, especially in some of the Western countries, around contract workers and how you recruit for them. And the moment you start looking at that perspective, you actually touch on something that John mentioned, and that is how fast should this candidate start and being productive. So we refer to it as TTP, total time to productivity. So when and how quickly must this candidate hit the ground? Now, that in itself is quite interesting, because traditionally, we used to say you recruit people for their attitude and their values. And to the top end, you will recruit people for qualifications and experience. But what we also find today, and especially in the last 18 to 24 months, we saw a move towards people that hit the ground faster. Now, I suspect that is to do with how fast the world is changing and the pace of doing business. Now, that, of course, you have to sort out in your actual interview process, how fast and how critical that candidate is, or the role is inside the organization. But we have found that there's a strong move towards technical testing in the pre-recruitment phase, which is interesting. I didn't expect that to happen, actually. I'm quite used to the behavioral tests and so forth being used by a fair part of the world. But we actually see a huge uptake in technical testing over the last couple of months. Actually, the technical test providers in the market started to report higher growth than any other test provider, which is important. And when we dipped into that detail a little bit more, it is really about understanding what is the investment I need to make in this candidate, how relevant are their skills today, seeing that the skills are changing so fast, especially, let's say, in IT development, or I'm recruiting for developers. The relevant languages, how skilled they are, or how proficient they are in these different languages, have actually become a key topic. And often the employer would say, I simply do not have the time available to train people up in these technical skills, or programming language in this case. So I need people to hit the ground within a month. It's interesting. I don't really want to judge whether that's the right thing or the wrong thing to do for an employer. I've got certainly personal views on that, but that is literally what we see in the market. A great push towards technical assessments, behavioral assessments are still there. Now, the assessment world has also changed a lot with regard to technology. We used to get individual professionals that does assessment in specialized fields, especially in the executive environment. You will still get that for many years, that you have dedicated assessment centers for executive leadership. That will not change. But what we will get at the lower end of the market, and we start to see that already, is what they refer to as assessment aggregators. So it is platforms that employers subscribe to that has a multitude of tests on them, and those multitude of tests can give you fairly quick responses in terms of the suitability of a candidate. Again, the warning that I had in the beginning, the quality of the data is directly related to the quality of the candidate you get. So if your data is not good enough, I suggest you follow a traditional recruitment process until your data gets sorted. And once it's sorted, then you can dip your toe into the aggregator platforms and more of the online tools. In addition, maybe when we look at the data world and technology world, and John referred to it as well, as when the candidate starts hitting the floor or during onboarding, what you often see and what our experience have been is the misconception the candidate has from what I'm recruited for versus what I'm actually doing. And that, especially if you're recruiting key talent, is a critical problem. So once the candidate is in the door, they've got certain expectations. So it again goes back to the quality of information you had available, how honest you were about the reality that this candidate is walking into. And the moment the candidate finds an environment that's very different from what they were recruited for, and they are key talent, the probability that they're going to stay is quite low. At the top end, what is interesting to me is we start to see candidates that are interested in the career I have with you, not in the job you are recruiting me for. And that is interesting because it also suggests that the employer must be far better prepared in a landscape of data and information on what are actually the roles or jobs that we have in our environment, what is the movement of people through those roles, and therefore, what does the ecosystem of career management and career development look like inside the employer? If you have a top candidate and you are interviewing them and you fumble across gumph when they start to ask you questions about potential career opportunities inside the organization, and those are legitimate questions, you may leave a certain impression that you are not at the top-notch employer than you paint yourself or put yourself out to be. So a push that we have with some of our clients is, how do you clean your back office? How do you clean that data environment so you have adequate information available? And the traditional data that we have on classic vertical career paths are no longer relevant, right? We're actually looking at an ecosystem of jobs that you can be interested in. So I might be a salesperson today, but because of certain traits and certain skills I've gathered in the past that you as the employer don't know about, I can actually do other things as well. So when we look at the world of data that we use when we bring employees into our own environments, it is number one, understanding what is available, how clear we are on what that means and how all these things interlink, but also how well do I understand the person that I've just recruited into my organization? Not just for the job you are recruiting them for, but also what are the other things they can do. So to some extent, there was a comment maybe 20 years ago that we are in the war for talent now, and the latest comment is that talent has won. Well, that has certainly not changed. Talent has won. But the only way for employers to really get on top of the IT recruitment game is a data approach, and through that data approach it allows you to create far deeper relationships. The moment you start trying to create relationships without data on your fingertips, I think you're losing, you're driving a losing battle, and you will simply not get anywhere. And the moment employees are getting the sense that you suck eggs when you are busy in the recruitment process and you're kind of lying through your teeth, you'll be discovered quite quickly. And very quickly, you will get an employee brand that says, listen, they might talk a good game, but the moment the tie hits the tarmac, there's nothing much there. So my suggestion to employers that want to put their toe into the technology field, especially as far as recruitment is concerned, whether that is preparing your job descriptions, as John put it, or role profiles, no matter what terminology is used, the clarity of that information, the choices you made on the data that you put out there. Don't put masses of data out there that means nothing. Be very specific, simple, as clear as you can, and use data that is recognized by others. Don't use obscure language that no one has ever seen or ever heard of. So choose things that the market would recognize. That's the data you push out. Be open to, especially at the lower end, to the automated push technologies that pushes you candidates. But as John mentioned, you've got to work it. It doesn't happen by itself. So it might feel that the technology pushes automatically, but it has all to do with the choices you have made and how you push and how you create through your networks, push this opportunities in certain directions. Then the assessment process, the online assessment processes that are available, the bot interview processes that are available, the interesting technologies available in face recognition, testing the language you use, testing whether you're potentially fumbling across the detail and so forth. Early days for them, but they are progressing very quickly, and I would suggest as an employee you get used to them because they are here to stay. The moment you bring people into your organization, the type of things you recruit them for, no longer only for a job, but for a full career. That again goes back to the data. How good does your data cosmos look like? What promises and commitments can you make to people is just as good as the data you have and the intelligence actually that you've gathered across the history of your organization. So I'm not going to weave on that. I think that kind of answers the question on technology. John, I don't know if you've got experience on the technology side and what your clients are doing.
Am I back on? Yeah, Otto, I totally agree with that. And just as an aside, as a business, we are heavily investing in data and how we leverage data. I think for talent professionals, you don't see the short-term win, but definitely over the long term, what you're speaking about is going to be making your job a lot easier. As an aside, the only things I would have covered up from a technology piece is, again, making the websites, your social media platforms, all of these things in the recruitment process, whether you like it or not, they're so important, particularly if you now looking at the new generation, millennials, that's all they look at. Another thing I wanted to mention is a success story we had with a local telecom business in Abu Dhabi is that I know that they did a lot of Emiratization piece, and they use Snapchat for their grads purely.
Yeah.
So you've got to think about these things. Also, a lot of things that we do now, I hardly send any emails to candidates anymore. I send all the information over WhatsApp because that's how they're using their phones and the technology. So they just want to bring it up on that. They don't want to sit and go through a big email. It's just something to think about. It might not be relevant for your business, but it's from a technology piece and a social media part, that's all I would want to comment on.
Mm-hmm. What I maybe also want to add, sorry, Frieda, before you go on, the aspect that we, and John actually kind of referred to it as well, is how quickly you need people. But what we have found is that the ability to plan ahead in terms of what people would I need when is also radically changing. Many years ago, sort of workforce planning is not a new thing. But the level of technology that has become available around workforce planning has also changed drastically in the last 5 years or so. There are very large platforms out there that helps you with scenario building, and with that scenario building, you get workforce planning, either strategic workforce planning, operational workforce planning. And the moment you are in the operational workforce planning environment, you certainly, as employer, have the ability to know and at least give your recruiters a head start on what you need when. And that, of course, the more or the better that partnership works on a planning level, the far better the quality of candidates you will get. The moment you can say to your recruiting partners, be that in-house or external, that these are the candidates I'm looking for the next year. These are the ones I'll look for in 3 months' time, etc., etc., etc. Either based on the cycle of exits that you have. I lose on average 20 call center agents a month. So that's the standing recruitment process I will have for call center agents. Or this is my growth plans for the year, and I know that we are expanding into a new division. We will need 5 finance people. We'll need these HR people. It's highly specialized. It's a digitized business unit, and therefore it's going to take longer to recruit for them. That level of planning, any employer can do today. There's absolutely no excuse for an employer not to be able to plan effectively around those. Of course, it creates a data environment and requires a data environment, but that level of partnership will show you, or that level of planning will show you immediate results with your recruitment partners, and they will bring you candidates. And the whole concept of just in time, when based on your plan, the people walk in the door the moment you need them, not because you are lucky, just because you planned. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, agreed.
I just wanted to interject that one as well. I forgot about it as I was talking.
We have 7 minutes left, so less than 3 minutes each. So all I want to hear from you guys is, what are your views on how the pandemic has changed recruitment and how work from home is affecting this? Otto, you first. 2.5 minutes. John, then it's over to you.
Let's go.
All right, I've got lots to say, so let me jump in. So working from home means there's distance between managers and employees. So there is certainly, from my perspective, a greater emphasis on people being able to cope with self-starting, working on their own, the social pressures that it requires working at home. So we certainly see an emphasis on certain skills or certain competencies, behavioral competence in a different way. We also do find that people tend to look for people that are ready to start. We find less of a view in terms of long-term development required for an appointment. So again, emphasizes the technical testing itself. And of course, the whole process of online interviews and so forth. So from my perspective, 10 seconds left. The type of competencies that you need to work independently, yet part of a virtual team, to build relationships virtually without looking people in the face, and the technical ability of people to actually hit the ground running has got a massive shift in terms of how ready candidates must be to get going. John.
That was good. I'd say the pandemic hasn't shifted any of the fundamentals that we spoke about as a recruitment consultant or a recruitment professional. We're in terms of some, what we're seeing is and Otto's touched on it, the career aspirations and motivations have changed. So now people have worked from home, they spent more time with family. Now they're thinking, right, I want a better work-life balance. So it's not necessarily all about money anymore. It's not about living in a city. It's how much time they're going to spend with their family. We've seen a lot of more senior candidates take early retirement. All these things that we need to think about. Millennials, for instance, they crave the interaction. They love a career. They want their work are their friends. But so you need to think about how you can move that closer. And then I've talked about the work-life balance, trying to be really quick. We think that this whole shift has actually pushed the gig economy, and it's going to be interesting to see how that's going to affect the market here in the UAE and the GCC, because there's not really at the moment, because of visas, you can't work as a contractor, really. You can ways around it, but that's not the norm. I think that might change. A big thing is also to think about is creating a successful work from home. I think people will continue to work from home, whether it be 2 days a week, 3 days a week, or what have you. So that's working with HR and management, senior leadership, to create a culture where you give people the tools, you train not just your employees, but your managers as well, because they need to successfully be able to lead a team remotely. All these things that have started to crop up that are going to be really important. Other things that I've seen from personal level, working with my wife during the pandemic, is during video calls and meetings, setting expectations, small things like showing up on time, wearing the right dress code, all these kinds of things you need to think about that have kind of popped up. And I think, post-pandemic, I think we'll take quite a few of these things that we're learning, but I think it's important that we recognize that everyone has to change the way they work. And I think it will continue to change in this more kind of remote style of working.
Definitely. I just want to, from my side, say that I honestly hope that we are not going to go back to full 5 days at the office after this, just to save the environment, save petrol, do all of those things, and save time. So I honestly hope that we are going to move to a more work from home environment for all. But if you look at work from home environments for all, then what competencies do you actually choose? Otto has spoken a little bit about this. And to me, the absolute critical components are, if the person doesn't have enough self-confidence, he may sit at home, he's solving his problem, but he doesn't have the self-confidence to go ahead and actually implement. So if you, as the line manager, knows this about this person, then you can catch him before he falls. If you know that the person is low on problem solving, then again, it's very difficult for those people to work from home. So you need to make sure that they are in some kind of a virtual team where problem solving they are assisted in problem solving, or that they know that they have a slight problem with problem solving, and that when they are heading for a disaster, or if they are getting stuck, they need to reach out. And then the other element that is absolutely critically important, and that is the element that catches me out the most, that is your inclination to be able to work in a team, or your inclination to want to work on your own. Now, my inclination is to work in a team. I don't have a very low inclination for working alone, but I'm now in isolation for the second time. And after day 5, it gets very, very hard for me. So I need to work on a lot of things to make sure that I have enough team contact during the times of isolation. And that's why you need to know your people. Another example is my son. He's a total introvert, he's a total nerd. So to him, he's happy to be on his own completely and work on his own completely. He gets a lot more done, he's a lot more stimulated, etc., than ever going to school. But the problem with that is, if he was my employee, he would have drifted so far away from the team that he would have lost contact with the team. So therefore, you need to know your people, you need to know their competencies, you need to know their psychometrics, so that you can pull them in and you can manage them in the right way. And I think we are going to look at tools, technology tools, on how to get to know your people and how to measure them on these elements, so that you can actually manage them remotely. And that, so that you can also decide which people should be working from the office 3 days a week, and which people 2 days a week, and which people should never come in and which people should never not, should always work in the office. And I think it's going to be different for different, not only for different types of jobs, but also for different kinds of people and also for different types of managers. That's my 5 cents. Thank you guys very, very much for everything that you've contributed today. I've learned a lot. I hope everybody else learned as much as I did. Sophie, over to you for the final thank yous.
Thank you, Frieda, and thank you, John and Otto. That was phenomenal. The level of information. I mean, the one thing that I will say is normally when we have these events, there's a stream of questions coming in. And so far, we haven't had very many questions, which I think is a testament to how much information you guys actually gave us on the topics. What we will be doing, everybody, is we will be generating a report with some tools based on what John and Otto and Frieda have all said, and some other insights that we have from our customer base that we've been gathering. But thank you everybody so much for attending today. I really hope that you learned as much as we did, and hopefully we'll see you at the next event. Thank you everybody, and enjoy the rest of your day.